Welcome back to this week's episode of Candid Caller, where we'll be talking about relationship dynamics, escalations, attempts to leave, narcissism, domestic abuse, all these topics that are heavy and difficult. And we're happy to have you with us because this is an important conversation to have. We are unbelievably grateful to our caller today, who has shared with us a very personal account that she has not shared with pretty much anyone else aside from a very close friend of hers, and her partly with her mother as well. But having her story today, I think, will resonate in some ways with lots of our audience, and it's a really horrifying story in a lot of ways, but opens a conversation that absolutely needs to be had. So we are grateful to be able to talk to her. But we wanted to talk, first of all, more about the overarching theme, really, of domestic abuse, of obsession, coercion, manipulation that can come. Obviously, domestic abuse can come in lots of different forms, and it can be difficult to really pinpoint in a lot of cases, whether it's the victim is a man or a woman. In the UK, 1 in 6 men are abused and 1 in 3 women. So it is more common amongst women, which I think broadly speaking, a lot of people already know that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's interesting to really look at it from the perspective of, whether or not it is a man or a woman, it absolutely needs to be taken into account. And I think having the conversation can also shed light on things that perhaps people might not even consider abuse or might not even look at as being abusive, and yet they really are and can have a lasting impact on the victim. We were speaking earlier this week when we were talking about this episode, and we read our caller's story, and it made us think of lots of different cases that have been either in the news or right now being trialed in the US or in the UK of domestic abuse. And there was one case specifically that we spoke about, and it was interesting because it was actually a woman abusing her husband as opposed to the other way around, which typically that's what you would consider, or that's what you would look to. Sarah Bone, the suitcase killer.
So terrifying. We literally watched the video that she took on the night of the incident, and obviously, if you're not familiar with the story, she put her husband in a suitcase and he suffocated. And in the video,
and she filmed it, yeah.
Yeah. So in the video, he's in the suitcase and she's literally filming him. You can tell that she's really drunk. She's like slurring her words. But yeah, in the video, she's like filming him, laughing at him. He's saying her name so that, she lets him out, and she's kind of saying like, that's my name, don't wear it out. She's kind of making a joke about it. It's a very disturbing video. And actually, apparently the story is that, she put him in the suitcase, whatever, she was drunk. She then fell asleep. She woke up. He was still in the suitcase. And then she called 999 or 911, I think it was in America. And he had passed away through the night, sadly.
Yeah. And it was interesting, the dynamic, because, to actually what you would, and I know it's a stereotype, but you would stereotypically look at a woman as being more maternal, being more empathetic, being more emotional, which I know is something that, a lot of people have an issue with people being, with women being described like that. But across the board, that's the stereotype, right? Yeah. So when you see a woman being so cold and like in this video, I mean, we couldn't even watch it the whole way through. It was absolutely horrifying of him pleading with her to let him out, and she didn't. And, it's being trialed at the moment, so we're not sure kind of what the outcome is. And obviously details of the case haven't come out yet, but we wanted to speak about it because it is a horrifying case, and it's something quite rare that a woman actually is on the other side of it. Like we were saying, 1 in 6, 1 in 3. So it's literally 50%. Yeah,
I think
different.
Abuse in women and abuse in men is very different as well. I think women are a lot more calculated and a lot more conniving. I think that men don't necessarily always control their emotions.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's
I think
not
women
to do
are
with
smarter
gender.
About the way that they abused to an extent.
Well, I think it
and
can
men have
be,
force as well, you know?
Yeah, but like we were saying, abuse comes in so many forms. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse. I mean, it can range. And I don't think it's gendered. I think it's more to do with personality and relationship dynamics.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For example, I think people with a narcissistic personality disorder, which, like we were saying last night, I think the word gets thrown around
all the time,
a lot.
yeah.
People be like, oh, you're a narcissist.
Yeah.
But actually, like when you really look at the word, and actually we wanted to say the definition because it is important. So narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. So it's like this grandiose perception of yourself. They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. So there's a lack of empathy and a lack of sympathy that comes with it. And in a lot of cases of abuse, the partner who is committing this abuse might have some of these character traits, which enables the abuse to continue.
Right.
And I think, you know, our call is going to be really interesting to hear it, you know, straight from her, because I know that we heard that she had a partner who was absolutely completely obsessive and coercive towards her and manipulative. And there's a real sense of isolation in that, which is an interesting point as well, that a lot of people who are in these relationships, whether they are toxic, abusive, or however you want to kind of label it, there's a huge isolation. And it's really difficult then at that point, not only for the person being abused to pinpoint the abuse, but for the people around them to pinpoint the abuse, because you're kind of in the dark.
Yeah.
You don't kind of know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
So it becomes increasingly difficult to have the conversation. I know we also spoke, you know, when we were planning this episode, about the fact that there's a lack of research into this topic, because people who are in these relationships tend to, if they do know that they are being abused, they might not come forward with it, especially men. That's an interesting point. People with narcissistic personality disorder who are potentially committing this abuse are also have this, like we were saying, sense of self-importance, that they don't think they are narcissists. And so therefore they don't come forward with it. So it's actually really difficult to study.
Yeah.
So there's big gaps in the literature and the scholarship, which again compounds this problem. And so for us, it's been really important to have the conversation, to share these stories, to create an open discourse where people can speak openly, candidly, without fear of judgment, because it opens the door.
Yeah.
And it also helps us understand those dynamics, which can be really difficult to understand.
Yeah. So we were speaking about how there was a situation where Lily was away with her girls, and essentially a girl was being abused by her boyfriend in the street. And Lily and I were talking about how we feel people should navigate situations if they are seeing someone get abused and it's an obvious situation. And I think a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of thoughts that go in the back of people's heads when situations like that happen. You know, am I going to make it worse? Am I going to make the aggressor more angry? And then it's going to make it worse for the victim later on. And I think it's a situation that's kind of, you know, not many people know how to go about it. How would you say that you would go about it if you...
Well, in our situation, when we were away, we did intervene because, you know, we felt completely horrified and so sad for the girl in question. So her boyfriend was being like physically violent towards her. And so we absolutely didn't even think twice and completely intervened. But we were actually the only people to do so. And we were on a very, very busy street, which was interesting. And there's a term called the bystander effect. And what it relates to is if something is happening and, you know, you might see something that is completely wrong. So say someone is, you know, being violent towards someone else, or, you know, whatever the situation might be, that if you don't want to intervene, a lot of times it's because people think, oh, someone else will do it. Oh, someone else will do it. Someone else will sort that out. And if everyone thinks like that, no one ends up sorting it out.
Do you actually think that? Because
Yeah,
I feel like many people
studied,
want to help, but they
no,
just
it's
don't
actually
help
it's actually a
because they're
studied
worried about making
thing.
it
It's called the
worse.
bystander effect. So
you just think the next person will sort it.
The next person will sort it. And so therefore there's no point in me getting involved. And like you say, I think people do think, oh my gosh, maybe it'll make it worse. But like ultimately, I mean, at least in the situation we were in, we did not think twice. I mean, it was absolutely horrifying. And we were like, this girl needs safety.
I also think it's different. You're in a big group of girls. I think when you're on your own or you're just one other person, it's kind of a bit.
Yeah, it can be
scary.
much harder. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that is something really interesting. But I also think having conversations like we're going to have today with our caller starts this discourse and starts this conversation, which is really important. And it starts shedding light on topics. And I think some people might listen to today's episode and think, oh gosh, I know someone who does that, or I've known someone who's done that, whether it's to do with coercion, whether it's to do with isolation, whether it's to do with mental abuse or financial abuse, narcissism. These are all themes of today. And I think it's a lot more common than people think. And like the statistics show, 1 in 3 women in their lives will be abused. And that's across all forms of abuse, right? And 1 in 6 men. And it might even be higher among men than what we think, because
they don't share.
Men don't share. Men don't want to admit, or they don't want to open up for lots of different societal
I think men
constructs.
take it as a weakness, but it's really not. And I think so many people have this idea of like, you know, if you're being abused, to kind of share it or whatever, it's kind of maybe a bit embarrassing. But I have a very different view on that. I really think that, first of all, like speaking about it is something that's very brave. Leaving the person that is abusing you is also very brave. I think that all of these things should be a lot more, I guess, what's the word? Like favored in society. You should be kind of praised for doing those sort of things a lot more, because it's admirable to be strong in yourself, to be able to remove yourself from situations, and you know, like this caller did too, to distance yourself from something that's very.
But also on that point, that
stressful.
In certain relationships, it feels as though it's not even an option. Like I can't leave. I just couldn't. Like
exactly.
And like, you know, I'm sure we'll hear from our caller today. She did end up leaving, but it wasn't the first time that she, you know, she tried multiple times, and on average it takes a woman or a man 7 times to leave an abusive partner.
I also think some people don't actually realize that they're being abused. I think so many people go about it in a kind of smart way. Like my point earlier, you know, maybe some women are maybe a bit more slick with the way that they kind of go about their abuse. This is definitely something that we've encountered with women, where, you know, women can be definitely, and I'm not taking away from men, can as well, for sure, but kind of maybe smooth with their delivery. And I think also, I guess women, because of the stats, they're not seen to be the abuser straight off the bat. So people don't necessarily assume straight away that, you know, what's going on is going on. Whereas I think if there's kind of any glimpse of maybe trauma, whatever, in a woman when she's in a relationship, then I think maybe the first thing that people will think is, oh, she's either being mentally abused or physically abused.
So on that point of talking about coercion and manipulation and obsession and all these themes that run through, our caller today got in touch and we read her story, and we literally thought, oh my gosh, if this was in a movie, you wouldn't believe it. It was like completely shocking. So we are, you know, really grateful that she got in touch. As we mentioned, she hasn't shared this with many people. So for her to have the bravery and the capacity today to do so is really phenomenal. And we really look forward to hearing more about her story. It relates to abuse, manipulation, coercion, and the subsequent escalation and all of that into a sort of pivotal day that she will mark. So we look forward to speaking to her, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to do so. So on that note, our caller today has got in touch, and we're very pleased that she did. We're really grateful for that. The story today relates to relationship dynamics and then the subsequent breakdown of those relationships and the potential behaviors, unwanted behaviors, obsessive behaviors, perhaps, that may come from that. So we're really pleased that she's got in touch. It's a really important conversation, one that I think will resonate with lots of people. So we're very grateful that she's here. So thank you very much for that. Maybe we'll start with a little bit of background. We know that the story relates to one guy specifically, but we'd love to hear from you any sort of details or any parts of the story that you'd like to share that relates to before you met him. So what your life was like before this.
Yeah, so before I met him, my life was quite normal. Like I come from a very normal family home. I was in school while I met him, but we kind of got a little bit more serious then when I started working. I was working in luxury retail. So yeah, I just had a really normal job, like pretty normal 17, 18-year-old.
Okay, so you were really young when you met him.
Yeah, very young.
Yeah, and where did you meet him? What was that first initial encounter like?
So my best friend at the time, she was in a care home, and one day the workers said to her, "Look, you're gonna get a new person in. Like, there's gonna be someone sharing the house with you." So me and her instantly were like, "Oh my god, yay! Like, hopefully he's a boy. Hopefully we can like bring him to school and kind of show him off. A
Yeah.
new friend for us, really. Like, because we came from a small town, so everyone
Okay.
knew everyone, you know. So yeah, we were really happy about that. But yeah, it turned a little bit sour real fast.
Yeah. And so what initially attracted you to him? Because I suppose the initial kind of stages must have been really nice for you guys to get together.
So, like at the start, he was a bad boy, and like I had a boyfriend before that, like puppy love, high school love kind of thing, and like he was such a good boy. So I've never actually encountered a bad boy. So when this guy came along, he was like bad boy to the core, didn't care, didn't even look at me. So I was kind of like, I'm really intrigued. Like, why
Yeah.
has he not shown me any attention? Like, I need to know more, you know?
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of played out, and then eventually we started dating.
Okay, cool. And what were the first few months like? I mean, how long did it last really before things started to become a bit sour? Was there a time frame in that?
So I'd say probably like 3 to 4 months in, I started to notice
Okay.
major red flags.
Okay. And what were those red flags?
So it kind of got a little bit crazy first. I'm pretty sure it was only our third day in, and we had this plan to go to the cinema. Like I got all dressed up. Obviously, I was so young, so like I
Yeah.
was like so excited. Like, oh my god, we're going to cinema! Like we're probably gonna be holding hands and kissing in the cinema. Like I just was so excited for that. And then suddenly, like while we were walking to the cinema, we lived in a small town, so you walked everywhere. While we were walking to the cinema, he was like, "Oh, I have to go to like one of the guys' houses," and I was like, "No, we're on our way to the cinema. What do you mean? Like our movie starts in 30 minutes. Like, no, we're
Yeah.
not going anywhere." And then he was like, "No, no, like, do you know what? Leave the cinema, whatever." So I like was like, "Oh my god, I'm walking home. This is crazy." So I like turned to walk home,
Mm.
and then like instantly I had like screaming and like, "Where you going? You're this, you're that, blah blah blah." And I was just kind of like, "Oh my god, what the hell is going on?" Like I haven't ever I always knew he was a bad boy, but to this extent it was kind of like, whoa.
Right.
So as I was walking home,
Mm.
I was kind of just like not even looking back at him. But next of all I heard like a big thud, and I kind of turned and he was on the ground and he jumped out in front of a car that was moving quite fast at that rate. Like he literally jumped, the car stopped, like the man got out of the car and was like, "What the hell did you do that for?"
Oh
And he
my
kind of looked
God.
to see my reaction, and I was kind of like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
What the
What?
hell? Like,
Yeah.
how do you even explain that? I was like, why would you do that? And then he kind of got
Mm.
up and says like, "Oh, are you gonna come with me now?" And I was like,
Oh
definitely
my
not.
god.
Oh
Like,
gosh,
what?
scary. Yeah.
And then we were right beside my house, so I kind of walked into my house quickly and like ran to my sister and was like, what? He just done this, you know? Like, and she was like, "What the
Yeah.
hell?" And then not even 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from this woman being like, "Hi, you need to get up here. Like, we have a guy here, and he's saying that like he really needs to talk to you. It's really urgent. Please come up to the bridge." So I
Oh
was
my
like, "What?"
God.
I was like, the
Jeez.
bridge, like there's a bridge that was right beside my house, and I mean, like, it was a steep drop, like it was like belonged to a train station kind of. So I was like, oh my God, what is going on? Like, these are my neighbors, you know? So like I ran up to the bridge and I was like, what is going on? And like I literally looked in front of me and he was hanging the opposite side of the bridge, like off the opposite side of the rails, like being like, are you gonna get back with me? If not, I'm jumping. Like,
What?
Okay,
so
so
I was
and
like,
this all happened on the day of the cinema when you were
oh,
supposed to
same
be.
day, all within the hour, literally
Oh
within the
my
hour.
gosh.
So I get up to the bridge and obviously I was so mortified because like the area I was from was a really good area. Like you don't really get his behavior.
Right.
So I instantly was like, oh my God, yeah, of course, like we're back together. Get down off the bridge, let's talk about it. Like, so instantly the minute I said we're back together, he like jumped like, you know,
Wow.
off the bridge and he walked down with me and he was like, I'm sorry I had to do that, but like I just can't live without you kind of thing, you know. So I was kind of a little bit like, I don't know if this is normal. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
what, like
Yeah.
when you're that young and someone
Yeah,
kind
you're
of
also young.
portrays this to you, you don't really understand. And obviously, I
Mm.
wasn't going to tell my parents about it, you know, that way. So I didn't have that advice of what to do, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And you said
and
that
then it
you had
kind of got
told,
a little bit. Sorry.
sorry, you said that you told your sister about it. What did she say about it?
My sister was younger and she was kind of like, oh my God, get up there, like don't let him die, you know, like she
Oh
was younger, so
wow.
she
Okay, yeah.
really didn't have a clue, you know.
Yeah.
She was
Right.
kind of like, oh my God, he's gonna like die and it's gonna be all your fault kind of thing.
Oh goodness.
But yeah, the behavior of that kind of progressed into like a weekly thing. Another incident that happened is he was in his mom's house. His mom texted me a message saying, hi, look, I know I hate to drop this news on you, but like he's in a coma. He might not make it. Is there anything you want to like text so he can see? And like
Sorry.
in my head at this stage, I was kind of like, what? Like, how is he in a coma? She was basically texting me like these long paragraphs saying, oh, we found him outside the door. Like he had a really bad nosebleed, so he had to go to hospital, and now like he might die.
Oh
So
my
like
gosh.
in my head, I was like, oh my God, this poor woman, like she's gonna lose her son. I'm gonna lose my boyfriend. Like, you know, I was like I'll get there as fast as I can, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and this was just while he was at a visit at his mom's house. He didn't live with his mom, as I explained earlier. He was in a care home.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, oh my God, this all happened and he's so far away. Like I'm gonna have to like go get a train or a bus like right now, you know. And then like as soon as I said I was gonna go, his mom was basically saying, oh no, no, don't, like he's not allowed visitors and stuff like that. And then like within a half an hour later, it was, oh my God, he woke up, he wants to talk to you, you know.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that was all him. Like I confirmed with his mom later on, like, you know, when we kind of more serious, and his mom was like, what? No, that was not me.
Wait, but you spoke to her on the phone, or he texted you off of her phone?
Oh, it was him. It was completely him. Like I confirmed
Oh my
later
God.
on that was completely him. And she
Oh
said, no,
my
like,
god.
look, that was not me. Like,
Okay, that is so frightening. So he was going to huge lengths to
oh, like
keep the
so,
control.
so crazy. Like it was really, and like it honestly over time got so much worse. Like I felt like every week, like this guy would send me videos of him like splashing his neck. And like if you've seen this guy's body to this day, I can guarantee he still has the same scars, like ripping his whole chest open just to prove a point. Like whenever I tried to leave him, kind of. And
Oh
like
my
it
gosh.
got to a stage where I was kind of like, you know what, this is getting tired now. Um, then like what kind of made me kind of stay with him then for that kind of year longer was I was in work one day. I had my phone turned off, you know, I was working, you're not allowed your phone in retail.
Yeah.
I later on pick up my phone and I see like 60 missed calls, and I was like, what could possibly go wrong? We did have an argument, but it wasn't even a breakup. It was just more so an argument. Like earlier on that morning before I went to work. And then one of his friends says, "Oh my God, like where have you been? Like we've all been trying to contact you." And I was like
What?
panicking, thinking like, what? Like what is going on? You know? And basically he was like, yeah, he's after hanging himself. Like he's literally in hospital right now. Like I literally found him blue in the face, and I was like, oh my God, what? Like, when did this happen? Why did this happen? Did like just trying to get all the context from him. But yeah, basically the situation was he went into his friend's shed and literally tied a heavy rope around his neck and tried to kill himself just because I wasn't replying to him.
Oh my gosh,
Oh
I'm so
my
sorry.
God.
So,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this is so crazy. So there were all these sorts of controlling behaviors towards you, and obviously you don't have to answer this, but was he ever, I mean, obviously this is a lot of manipulation and it's a lot of sort of like mental abuse and psychological coercion and abuse, but towards you, did you ever feel frightened around him, or was it just the subsequent behaviors after you'd have arguments and stuff?
So I actually didn't ever feel kind of like, oh, he'd do like hit me. Like there was
Yeah.
situations where he'd always go over and like hit someone's car or like, do so many
Mm,
of those situations, but it was never actually like where I felt like he'd hit me, do you know, that way.
mm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right.
Um, so yeah, it was never really me. Um, I never really had any fear that he was gonna ever hit me.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so after his friends got in touch with you and you were made aware that he had attempted to take his life, what happened after that?
So I was kind of like, right, I can't let him be anywhere near my parents because they're not gonna let me be with him.
Yeah.
But at this stage, I had to ring my mom. I was like, you know what? Like, he's in hospital. Like, he's after doing this. Like, what the hell do I do here? And
Mm,
she was like, let me drive you to him. Like, you get off the bus where you are. Like, I was leaving work at this stage. She was like, get off the bus. I'll bring you to the hospital and we'll go see him. So, like, I went into the hospital and, like, he was laughing. Like, he's, like, honestly, he's not okay in the head. He was laughing.
Oh,
But, like, I seen his face was completely, like, black kinda, and, like, I could see the visible rope marks on his neck, so, like,
oh
it
my
wasn't
God.
like all the other times where he was, like, hanging off a bridge or this or that, like, he really, really did try this time. And he, like, told me there and then, like, "If you're not gonna be with me, like, I'm dying." And, like, in that moment, I was kind of like, "Oh my god," I really nearly, was the reason that he died, because even the
Oh.
doctors talked to me like, he is lucky that he was found, like, 3 seconds later and he would have been dead,
Yeah, it's kind of,
so
it's hard with those sorts of people because you want to, your instinct really is to try and help, but I feel like it's exceedingly damage to you
mm.
and to your
oh, a million
family.
percent.
Yeah. So he came home
So
with
my
you.
mom so yeah, my mom basically said, look, let's take him home with us. He can stay with us for a little while and like, try get himself better. And I was kind of like, thank God, because like I'm not like there was sides of him that was such a loving, protective boyfriend. But then
Right.
there was the other side of the minute he was say something wrong and I'd correct it and I'd say, look, you're wrong. It was boom, like do something crazy to get her attention. Even though I was giving him so much attention already, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah, he ended up moving in with us. My dad was not happy about that. He was kind of like, "What are you letting happen here? Like, this is
Yeah.
like
Mm,
not happening." Like at this stage, I was 19. I think I just turned 19. And yeah, so he moved in with us for a little while, and he acted really, really well for my parents because he kind of knew my dad wasn't the type to take any of his shit. Like he would have straight
mm,
Right.
away been like, "Get out."
yeah.
So he was acting really, really well, and I was working, he wasn't. So obviously that's a big red flag in itself.
Yeah.
I was a really hard worker. I was gone like literally all day, coming home at night time. There was times he was still a little bit toxic. He'd show up at my work and be like, "Oh, like your manager is male, like you're definitely with him and this and that." And
Oh my
like my
gosh.
manager, I was like, "Oh my god, you're so far from wrong." Like my manager looks at me as a kid because I was a kid. He kind of started showing up at work then like nearly every single day, and it just became very, very obsessive. Like he was just always on my back about something
Yeah.
and like showing up being like, "Oh, you can't get the bus home alone." Like even though I'm like, I've been doing this all year.
Wow.
So yeah, it got really, really like a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
Um, and then it got progressively worse. So, as he was living with me, like in my head, I always believed he was infertile. He told me from day one, look, like if you want to be with me, like kids, it's not something I can have in the future. And I was like, fine, I'm literally 19. I'm not thinking about kids right now.
Right.
And I was taking contraceptive all the time. I missed it one time in December and I went to the doctors to get it, like my prescription like renewed for me. And basically they said, "Oh, you're pregnant." I died.
Oh
I
my
died
Oh.
God.
because in my head I'm thinking, what the hell? Like, this is just not someone I wanted to be pregnant for. It was kind of, I was kind of more so with him for pity.
Right.
Yeah, wow.
At this stage, it was kind of a little bit more for pity and just kind of trying to hold out to see can we make it, you know.
Mm.
So yeah, I was still going to work, but he became so much worse when I was pregnant. Like it was a whole 360. It was insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't allowed to walk anywhere alone. I wasn't allowed to like get any public transport alone. I like even going to work, he'd have to be there after work to make sure I was coming home and that my boss still wasn't like, involved, which is
Mm.
insane, like, so then what happened was my parents went to Prague and he acted really, really well for my parents. I'm not joking. Like
Yeah.
he would never step in line in front of them. Like if we had an argument, I mean it would be him whispering, it'd be him getting his anger out and whispers to me. He'd never ever raise his voice.
Right.
One morning he woke, he was like, "You cheated on me, like blah blah blah." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I had a dream you cheated. I know you did." And I was kind of like,
Oh my
I was
God.
like, oh, like I'm pregnant at the stage. Like I'm only a few weeks, so like it was nothing like a long. I didn't even have a bump at the stage, like it was 4 or 5 weeks pregnant.
Okay.
And I was kind of like, oh my God, like I'm with you. I'm literally carrying your kid. What do you mean I'm cheating? I'm not. And like I was the most loyalist person, which makes it so much harder.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you're cheating. It was just obsessive. Like every single day, it was always something. And yeah, so my parents went to Prague, and it just became he was screaming. He didn't really care, like, if my little brother and sister heard,
Wow.
if my older sister heard, like, he really didn't care at this stage. So I was like, "Do you know what? Like, leave. Just get out
Yeah.
of the house and cool down," because, like, I didn't want my little sister and brother to tell my parents, "Oh, like, well, he was screaming at her while you were gone," because obviously they'd be like, "Get out." And at this stage, like, I'm carrying a baby. I'm like, "We have to be a family no matter what." That's kinda how I thought
Wow.
at the stage. Um so yeah, I didn't want them to like, go back and say it to my parents or anything like that. But so I kicked him out and I said, you know what, go cool down. And then like I'm pretty sure it was 8 o'clock at night. I like look out the window and I could see him like just sitting like from a distance in the grass. And I
Oh
was
my
kind of
gosh.
like, oh my God, to my little sister, I was like, oh my God, like, is that him? Like he's literally outside. And she was like, no, 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 that's not him. That's a rock. Like we were so confused if it was him or like a rock or something. But it was him just sat like staring at the house like a psychopath.
Oh
And
my
me and her were
God.
genuinely so afraid. We were like, he hasn't budged in an hour. He would just sat there staring at us like um at that stage then I was kind of like, oh my God, like what do I actually do in this situation? Like, I don't want to let him back in because I need to prove like you can't treat me like this, like get out.
Mm.
This is my home. Do you know what I mean? Don't scream at
Yeah.
me in my own home. And then next of all, we were just sat there, and next of all, it was like, oh my God, you're this, you're that, like boom, cars smashing outside, windows smashing outside. I was like, what is actually going on? So like I look out the window and I see him and I start texting him saying, "Oh my God, stop right now. Like you're literally breaking my neighbor's car." And like the road I lived on and stuff, it was really, really, really posh. So I was
Yeah.
so mortified. I really was. I was like, "Oh my God, like these neighbors have never seen anything like this. We are gonna be like that road on the block or that house on the block that's like, the animals came from that house."
Yeah.
Um so yeah, my neighbor's window was just proper kicked in. I like ran out to try like stop him kind of. I was like, oh my God, please like stop, stop, stop. And he's like, are you gonna let me in? I was like, no, definitely not after this. I was like, get away now. And he like ran past me, kind of pushed me. I fell like face into the like dirt, like it was like kind of mud where he was. I
Oh my
fell
Yeah.
God.
straight into the mud. He ran past me, so I like hopped up and tried to chase him, and he ran to the kitchen drawer, took out a big knife and stabbed himself in the leg
Oh my
in,
God.
in
What?
front of my 12-year-old little brother. I ran
Stop
in and
it.
like I just seen a puddle of blood everywhere, and I was like I'm not joking. In that moment, I was like, "Is my little brother stabbed?" Like that's literally how I felt. I was like,
Oh
"Is he
yeah.
after like hurting him, or like my little brother just sat there like just staring into oblivion, being like, what, you know?"
Oh my gosh.
So at that stage, then I was like, like my older sister, she would be crazy. So I like called her. I was like, "Oh my God, get down here! Like, look what he's doing." She ran down and she like bet him up, proper bet him up, and kicked him out of the house. And I feel like at
Good for
that
her.
stage, then I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm definitely,
Wow.
definitely, definitely done. I'm pretty sure he was outside all night. God
Oh
knows
my,
doing what, probably like planning a way to get in and kill me at that stage. But I
is
just
that
was
how you
like, yeah, I rang
felt?
his mom. I said, like, please come get him. Like, I am
Yeah.
finished here. Like,
And so, oh my gosh, that's absolutely horrifying. Did your family know you were pregnant?
yeah. So yeah, they did. Yeah,
Okay.
it was kind of straight away when I found out. I told them because I was so young. I didn't
Yeah, of
like I didn't
course.
want to keep that from them, and I hadn't got a clue either. At that stage, I was like, do I go ahead with this? Do I not? Like, I just needed advice, and everyone was kind of a little bit happy for me, apart from my dad. He was like,
Yeah.
no,
Because
like he
I
just hated
guess
me
he's
at that
just so
stage.
protective. And I guess dads also have a sense of, their daughter's safety and their daughter's well-being. And if he was witnessing things, he would have felt very uncomfortable with it. So after he stabbed
Yeah.
himself, what happened?
So he basically was outside then for most of the night. I'm pretty sure his mom came to collect him.
Okay.
And then my mom and dad were in Prague, as I said. I rang my mom and I just said, look, I can't go ahead with this pregnancy anymore. And she was like, what? And I kind of like told her a little bit of what's been happening and like things she wouldn't know, kind of. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so happy you said that. And like they were
Yeah.
so relieved. Like they were from the start. My dad was like, like, don't go ahead with this. This is crazy. You're too young, which I was. Like some people do it and some people thrive, but it really, really depends on your situation. Like for my
Mm.
situation, it just got so much worse when I was pregnant. And I was looking back to the times of like him jumping out in front of the car and on the
Mm.
bridge and hanging himself. And I was just really thinking, like, for my future, my life is going to be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so uncertain and with a child, I mean, I completely, I think it's very brave for you to make that decision for yourself and for your well-being, knowing everything you know, and also giving weight to certain situations. Because like you said, I think with a lot of relationships when you're younger, especially, things happen and you kind of go past them and you think, oh no, it won't happen again, or that's fine. And, you kind of excuse it. So for you to have the bravery to actually acknowledge everything for what it is and to do that is phenomenal. So you left him in the end. How was that?
So yeah, I left him. He obviously wasn't giving up. Like you already heard how crazy he was. So he would not given up without a fight. Like every day I'd get flowers at the door and like notes and like I'm outside. Like it was constant. I never told my parents about this because I never wanted, like my dad, for example, he'd be a hothead. I never wanted him to go out and hurt him because I
Yeah.
just really still did pity him. Like in my head, I'm like,
Wow.
this boy has serious, serious problems. Like the last thing I want is my dad going out and like just like running them off and stuff. So I was just ignoring him to the most I could. And then I booked in to get obviously the abortion, and I had to make up a big narrative to him that like I fell and like, oh, we're after losing it. Like, like that's it now, don't contact me again. And like he genuinely still believes to this day that I fell.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Like, no, no, no. Like, honestly, it was the best. Like, to be honest, if
Yeah,
someone turned around
absolutely.
and told me now, I would not care. I would be like, oh my God, I'd punch you right now. But like, looking back, it was just the best decision because I really feared for me. If I did tell him that, I feel like he'd be like, oh, well, you killed my child. I'm going to kill you. That's kind
Oh
of
my,
his mentality. So,
Yeah.
but it was so hard because, like, for so long after, all I heard was, oh my God, like, I swear over my child's grave, I'm going to be better. And like, and I had to hear
yeah.
that constantly, knowing that like I just done the ultimate thing, kind of, and like every day it was, I swear on my child's grave. And like some days I felt like saying, oh my fucking God, like, are you serious? Like, your child doesn't have a grave, like, you
Yeah,
know.
no.
Yeah.
And
But
that allowed you to be free ultimately, because once you have a child with someone, it becomes exceedingly difficult to then
Lead separate lives.
to lead separate lives and to have a separate existence because you're unified with this child. So that was a
I would have been
phenomenal
all
decision
beside
for you to
him
do
till the end
that.
of time. I know he's not
Yeah.
the type
Absolutely.
that would like there's men out there that are like, I don't want nothing to do with my child. I'd rather a man like that than a man like this, because he
Yeah.
wouldn't have left us like alone for a second. Like, and it would have been
Mm.
like, it would have been hell. And like I really, really think it was the best decision. And I feel like it's a really important message. That's why a big reason I wanted to come on today, because like if you're in that situation, like looking back now, I thank God so much that like that decision was just brought to me, to do that.
Yeah.
Mm.
and to have the bravery to tell your mum as well, and to make that decision for yourself is phenomenal, because I think, like you said, it's a really important message that if you're in a situation where you're with someone who could potentially, you know, be harmful towards you and act unbelievably, you know, I don't even know what the word is, inappropriate doesn't really give it
It's
enough like
crazy. Yeah,
weight.
I
Like
know,
it's
I know. It's
phenomenal.
mentally torturing.
Absolutely. Yeah, complete torture,
Yeah.
actually. That's exactly the right way to put it.
I think what made me like really, really like this was all done and stuff like that, and I was out on a night out, and he found where I was. He literally came in and was like, I mean, grabbing me by the arm. This was way after the abortion. I'm pretty sure it was a
Wow.
month in. And he was like grabbing me out of the club by the arm, being like, why are you out, you know, we're only finished, and you're out. And like, obviously at that stage, like, I was like drinking so much just to try kind of
Yeah.
escape what I've done, because it's not an easy, I'm a very, very maternal person, so it wasn't
Yeah.
an easy decision. I was going through a really hard time, and like, he just arrived everywhere I went, kind of.
Oh my gosh.
And at that stage, he was kind of like, you know, like, you don't care about what just happened to our kid, you're out and you're partying and all this and that. And my friend was like, come on, let's just go home. And then he was like following us, like he was not letting me and her go anywhere. Like, he was trying to get into taxis with us. Then we'd like jump out the taxi and be like, please just take him, like let him go home. And then he'd be like jumping out, being like, I'm going with you. Like, I swear to God, if you don't let me go, I'm gonna like. And we knew, my best friend knew exactly what he was like at this stage. Like, she knew he'd like run over and hit someone to prove a point, or like, you know, even as far as he'd go stab someone just to prove a point to us, you know. So we were kind of trying to keep him calm.
Yeah.
And he was saying to me, look, if you don't let me go back with you, I'm literally gonna burn our house down, and I can promise you that, and stuff like that. And me and her were like,
What?
oh my God, like, when does this end? Like, how do I get out of this? And at
Yeah.
this stage, like, where my friend lived was very, very far from me. So it's not even like I could be like, I'm going home, where I know he's afraid of my dad. Like, I was stuck literally like a good hour from where I lived, you know.
Oh my gosh. Because this is the thing, right? It's like you've made that phenomenally brave jump to leave, to make all these decisions for yourself, and completely right to do so in every single way. But then, exactly like you're saying, the question remains, but how do I actually leave? Because even in the
Yeah.
situations where you're out with your friend and you know, the situation is done, it's finished, he's still finding a way to be around you and threaten you and threaten your friend. So
And
how?
he would have lived like 3 hours away, you know. He was purposely
Wow.
coming here.
Wow. So how did, when was the defining moment where you actually left and that was that? Was there a time that happened?
It was actually that night. So the
Okay.
night of the whole club incident, he followed us home. She said, "Oh, just come in, like, you know, like, just we really just tried to calm him as much as possible, because in his head I'm thinking, like, you know, he thinks I lost a kid for him. Does he ever question that I did have the abortion? You know, I'm thinking, like, what is he really capable of? Let's just try keep him calm." So basically, I just said to him, "Look, like, can we please talk about this tomorrow?" I knew my dad was collecting me in the morning, so I was saying to him, "Look, can we please talk about this tomorrow? Like, I promise it'll be a great conversation. I've missed you." Like, just feeding him all the shit just
Wow.
to literally escape him for the night. I said, like, "I'm gonna go in and sleep here. Like, can you just please sleep on the chair? Give me a little bit of space," and stuff like that. And no, all night long he was like literally beside me in that bed, and he was saying stuff like to me, "I can't believe, like, you know, you tried to leave me, and oh my God, our poor kid is like looking down on us, so upset because like we've left each other." Like, it was like a whole new level.
Oh my
And at one
God.
stage, he went outside, and like, I was just lying in bed, I swear to God, with like tears rolling down my eyes. Like, I was so, so afraid in this moment, because the things he was saying to me was so psychotic. Like, it was just like, we should all be together again as a family, like all the kind of stuff that makes you think like he's gonna kill me and himself, like, to
Yeah.
be together with this family.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and then he went out and like got like a big huge like liter of vodka, and he was sitting there and he was just chugging it, and I was like, oh my God, this is literally a nightmare that I'm living right now. And I didn't want to scream into my friend next door, being like, oh my God, please help me, because he would have heard it, and I knew he would have no problem hitting a man, woman, kid. You know, that was that type of person.
Wow.
And so I just laid there crying for so long. And then next of all, I felt like a knife. Something really, I didn't know it was a knife till the next morning, but I felt a knife like digging off my back. And I remember he whispered in my ear, he was like, "Are you gonna leave me?" And at that moment, I was like,
My God.
I'm not joking, I didn't answer him until the fourth time because I said to myself, "I'm dead. Like, there is no way I'm living." Like,
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
I'm
sorry,
god.
I'm
so
getting a little bit
sorry.
overwhelmed.
No, do you want
No,
to
no,
take a
no.
second?
No, I'm fine. I'll keep going.
I'm
And yeah,
so
so
sorry.
basically he had the knife in my back and he was saying stuff like, we like you like we'll be together again. It's fine. Like, like don't worry, like it's all good. And like I'll never forget being like putting my hand kind of on my back and being like, oh my God, you're really hurting me. Can we just talk? Like, and I rolled over and he kind of like put it on the counter and I seen it was a huge kitchen knife. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like I'm literally gonna die here and my best friend is gonna find me, like, and him, because he definitely killed himself. Um and at that stage then I just turned over and I was like, oh my God, we should definitely try for another kid, like not right, obviously not right then. I was like, I just feel so sick. I'm so sorry that I'm not talking to you. I just really don't feel well. I feel like I need to get sick. Like, give me a minute. I'm just going to the bathroom. And I was like in the bathroom, like sticking my fingers down my throat, pretend I was getting sick, just so he'd sympathize with me a little bit. Um, and then like I'd get back into bed and he'd be like, "Oh my God, are you okay? You're getting sick. Like this must be because of all the stress of me not being with you and the whole lot." And then yeah, he ended up falling asleep, thank God. But I did. I,
Yeah.
I sat there and I cuddled him and I told him like we're gonna be a family again. We'll try again real soon, as soon as it's safe enough to do so, and all this kind of making up stuff. And then my dad collected me the next morning. I obviously told my friend and I rang her and told her everything and she was like, "Oh my God, like I would have rather died with you than you go through that."
Yeah.
And then me and her booked flights and moved to Spain.
What a good friend that you had that supported you, and you must have felt really supported there.
Oh, I did, because I was planning on going alone, even if she didn't come. It was kind of one of them decisions that I knew, like, I can't tell my dad because my dad would kill him. And then I was afraid as well that, like, if my dad's attacking him, he'd pull out a knife on my dad and hurt my dad.
Yeah.
It was just one of them situations, like, and he was already at this stage so known to the police that they probably would have said, like, oh God, this fella again. Like, I just feel like it wasn't going to get taken serious. And because he wasn't doing anything, like, physically to hurt me at that stage, like, what can I say? I have a dramatic boyfriend that's like threatening to kill himself. They'll say, well, like, most people do.
Mm.
Yeah. Did you ever get in touch
So
with the police about the situation?
with who?
With the police?
Oh no, never. No, no, no.
Never.
It was just one of them situations where, like, when you're younger and you don't really understand the extent of a situation,
Absolutely.
I feel
Yeah.
like that's how it was. I feel like I just felt like, what could I say to him? Like, he didn't actually hurt me, or he didn't, like, even with the whole knife in the back situation. Like, in my head back then, I thought, well, he didn't actually stab me. Like.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah, I think
It's
you're
only
so
now
right.
that I'm like so
Yeah.
much older. It's like, whoa. I
You
Yeah.
wish
realize
someone
how
would have like
actually bad
killed
it
this
is.
man for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. When you are younger, your perception of things and your view on the world is so different. And you're so right
Oh,
that, it's so much easier to excuse things, and you feel as though, oh, maybe I'm being over dramatic and maybe I'm being and actually it's not that at all. But if you're trying to kind of make it work and try your best in that situation, then it makes sense you'd be like that. So you moved to Spain, you left
I moved to
physically.
Spain. I think I was there for 6 months. So by that time, he like didn't he text me, and like text me on fake pages and all that kind of stuff. But once it was not showing up in person, I didn't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I moved to Spain. I lived there for 6 months. It was like the best time of my life. By the time I came home, I was just a whole new person. I kind of like escaped the trauma a little bit, and like everything that happened, it was just so little, because I was like,
yeah.
I'm not seeing a whole new side of the world now. Like, this little situation, it's nothing like he's gonna forget about me, and he actually, luckily enough, did.
No,
Sorry.
and so you came back after 6 months feeling completely renewed. And what was that like, being back with your family after having lived through all of that and having had the time for yourself?
It was honestly amazing. And like the funny thing is, I like no one in my family knows this whole story either. Like my mom heard little
Wow.
bits and little bits and bobs, but nothing to the extent of what I said here. Like, I've only told my little sister now, who's a little bit older. I've told her only last year
Wow.
about all this stuff, and she was like, "What?" Like, she sat there crying for like
Oh,
the whole hour I was telling her the story. Like, she sat crying. She was like, "Oh my God, what?" like, why didn't you
Yeah.
tell me? But at the time, I'm pretty, she was like 16. I didn't want to, like, put that on anyone in the family, especially her.
Yeah.
She'd be the closest to me. But yeah, it's only kind of now that I'm actually kind of speaking about it.
Well, it's phenomenal that you are. And I think it can be a really isolating place when you're with someone like that, because you feel as though, like you're saying, you can't reach out, you don't want to put it on other people. And so you end up really suffering on your own. So we've really, I
An
mean,
impossible situation to be in.
I'm honestly at a loss for words because your story is so poignant, and yet you have so much bravery sharing it with us. And it's unbelievably brave of you to actually be able to speak about it in the way that you have, in such an eloquent way as well. It's a tribute to you. What are your feelings now towards it? Obviously now you're older.
I feel like the reason I did want to speak about it and my feelings for, like, to be honest, I really don't even think about it to this day. Like,
Wow.
I'm really, really healed. I
Yeah.
have an amazing partner. I have a baby now. We live at the other side of the world. Like, I've really come such a long way. And I look back and I say, thank God I did that, because I wouldn't have been able to ever escape. I never would have been able to move. Like, I'd always
No.
have him attached to my hip. So I feel like just getting the message out there to young girls that are probably I've heard so many situations about people that are in similar situations, but they can't leave because they're like, oh no, like, I need to stay. But now, when they have the kids and stuff like that, like, they're proper locked down to them and they can't escape because it's so much harder. So my advice is, because I know there's a lot of circulation around abortion of, like, is it right?
Yes.
Is it wrong? That's why I wanted to come on, to let young girls know, like, yes, it is okay. And coming from me, like, I could not have asked for a better outcome, because right now I would not be where I am. Like, I
Yeah.
have the most loving family. My partner doesn't even raise his voice to me, let
Yeah.
alone all that crazy stuff. So, like, and it's just, my son never has to see any negativity or any words going back and forth between his mom or dad, because we're just so positive in this house.
Yeah,
And I never would have been
absolutely.
able to
So
give a child
special.
that. I never ever would have been able to give a child that with him, because the child would have grew up so messed up. And I just feel like it's important not to bring a kid into that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're
100%.
so right. And everything you've said is completely correct. Like you're saying, if you are in a situation where you want to seek an abortion, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And every woman should feel empowered to do so if that is what you think is right. And I think you're completely right in everything you're saying. And it's really lovely to hear that your life now is so peaceful and happy. You absolutely completely deserve it, especially after everything that you've lived.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much. I feel like I'm really so happy now. And but I feel like like, going through that situation has really made me also. Like, I don't think I would
Yeah.
have been who I am. And even, like, meeting people, like, I can sense straight away, like, if someone's in a wrong situation, because I showed them signs too. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like it's really helpful as well for other people, because I can see it in them straight away. So it's just kind of being that voice for some people. And I do plan on speaking about it more, because I just feel like all the circulation around abortion and stuff is not right, because there's so many people telling girls, like, oh, it's not the right thing to do, like that you lay down to create the baby, that, like, there's so many situations that people have no clue about, and they're just judging it off, like, black or white.
Yeah.
They don't
Absolutely.
honestly see the full color of the situation. And I feel like if more girls, like me, start speaking out, people might start understanding the whole abortion
Yeah.
circulation a little bit more clearer. Because
For
we don't do,
sure.
like, I genuinely think, if I was with an amazing person, I decided tomorrow it's not right for me, it's still not right for me.
Yeah.
But there's also so many situations like mine where it's definitely not right for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the other thing is, someone might listen to your story and they might resonate with, 10%, 20%, 50%, and they take something from that. And that's phenomenal as well. I feel like the more conversations people have about all these different like themes, whether it's to do with obsession and possession and abortion and all of these things, it's so important. And it's amazing that you've spoken today. It really is, because I think so many people will listen to this, and even if they see just one thing that really helps, then it's worth it.
Well, that was the goal of why I wanted to
Yeah.
talk. I really just hope, even if one girl resonates to it and says, "Oh my God, like that's kind of like him," or that this situation sounds a little bit familiar, like just literally run. I just really hope it does help someone, and I hope they get out of this situation if that's like the case.
Your life now and who you are now is a testament to everything you've been through, and it's amazing to hear that you're living such a happy life now. You really deserve it.
I feel like that's the main thing, is because if you get away from the situation, you'll see how much better life can be, that way,
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
just sticking around, and seeing, oh, it might change. No,
Mm-hmm.
if you go into a situation and it's not 100%, and, I feel like just picking someone who is a really, really good person is just the key, because no matter what, they
Absolutely.
still have their morals and values.
We really
No
appreciate it.
problem at all.
I honestly think that was one of the most
Insane things I've
horrific
ever heard in my life.
stories I've ever
Yeah.
heard. Also, coming from someone who spoke so eloquently and shared it in such a, despite all the themes being so dark, she managed to really keep the storyline.
Yeah. And not only that, she said she literally hasn't spoken about it except for kind of only a couple other times.
Yeah. So she hadn't really told anyone about it. Obviously, her friend had been involved, had witnessed some things. She, her siblings had witnessed a few things. Well, the one thing I found really interesting is with a lot of situations where you're in a relationship that is abusive, whether it's psychologically, emotionally, financially, physically, whatever it might be. One theme that like you see a lot is isolation. And although she was isolated in the sense that she didn't tell many people about the story, I think the fact that he lived in their home is quite interesting because, and like she said, obviously he was unbelievably well behaved, like she put it in front of in front of her parents, sorry. But yet it's interesting that he allowed her to remain in that family dynamic despite the fact that he was behaving so badly. I suppose maybe because they were so young, it might not have been an option. But the amount of manipulation that was going on, and I mean, for him to use suicide, I mean, this is something you hear a lot actually when it comes to relationships where people will, where, men or women, depending on what the dynamic is, they will threaten, oh, I'm going to kill myself. That's something you see quite a lot because obviously, and like she said, you feel a sense of responsibility, you feel a sense of pity, you feel a sense of empathy and sympathy, and you feel bad and you want to fix them and all this sort of stuff. And actually, ultimately, it is just coercion, it's manipulation, and it's control.
Yeah. And these people also know that obviously being in a relationship, you love that person. So it's not even just that you have pity for what they're going through. On top of it, you are in a relationship with them, you love them, and obviously you're with them for certain reasons that, seem to make sense at the time.
That can be hard to quantify and describe in a lot of cases. I think it's amazing that she had the courage to leave and move.
Yeah.
Because like it was really interesting when we were
but actually quite sad that it got to that point to where she had to leave her life behind.
I mean, absolutely. The whole thing is horrifying.
Yeah.
But so brave of her to take that step because with a lot of these cases, it does escalate like it did in this situation to violence, to an insane amount of craziness. And it's almost like it's so confusing and it's so upsetting that you don't kind of know which way to go. I think she's an unbelievably
Not only that, I think she
brave-
probably felt a sense of responsibility for her family too. She said in the story when he came around to the house, she has both of her siblings living at the house. He's acting crazy. It kind of leaves you with the responsibility of him, the responsibility of yourself, the responsibility of your whole family. Like it's such an impossible situation to be in.
To me that like she knew obviously that her father didn't approve of him and didn't trust him, and then didn't share as openly with him as she did with her mother because she knew her father would be completely against her being with him. So that kind of protection mechanism again, and it's like this cycle of coercion and manipulation that, like she said, came to a head that night where he pulled that knife on her. But ultimately, you know, some situations never get to that. And so you're in this cycle and you might not even realize you're in this cycle because your go-to is to protect and excuse and ultimately, you know, in a way, in this situation, it freed her because it allowed her to realize actually this has gone to a level that I cannot and will not be okay with. And then one point I think which would be really interesting to drive home, and I think it was important to her to get this point across, was abortion. And as it relates to abortion in these situations as well. But I guess more generally speaking as well, to, you know, I guess her point really was to encourage other young girls, if they're not in, if they feel that that's what they want to do, that they should absolutely be encouraged to do so. And that, you know, there's no shame in it, because I feel like there is a lot of shame associated to it as well. Obviously, her accent was Irish, and also that, you know, that's an added stigma. Obviously, Ireland was one of the last countries in the world to bring abortion. Well, it was illegal for many, many, many years. And so I think that was really important to her to share that and to make sure that people really heard that in the context of her story, that ultimately this story is about the coercion and the manipulation and the obsession that this guy had. But in her private life and as a woman, there was something much deeper actually that came from it.
And that's now allowed her also to have a healthy relationship with now, like she said, she has a baby, she has a healthy relationship with, I don't know if it's her boyfriend or her husband, her partner. And that's great. And if she hadn't have done that, you know, that probably wouldn't have been possible for her. So it's really important.
So we would like to say a enormous thank you to our caller today, because I think it's rare that we're at a loss for words, but I think today we definitely are. And it was a completely horrifying, compelling, poignant, sad, but also a story of hope and a story of courage and a story of bravery at the end of the day. And that's where it all ended, which is obviously lovely. But her being so candid will allow a lot of people to resonate with this, which is really important to us. So yeah, a massive thank you to our caller, and tune in next week for our next episode.